now.
All right. The next part of this podcast. My name is Matt Taylor. I am a very big baseball fan. Um, and the topic that we're going to talk about next uh, hits a nerve with me because it's about a team moving. So I'm looking to hear what you two boys think about that. I'll certainly tell you what I think about it.
Oh yeah, I got some thoughts. I'm Quinn Rolo and love baseball. Love talking about baseball, even though I'm, as I mentioned in the first episode, maybe the least athletic person you've ever met. Love watching these sports, and baseball's always been my favorite. So I love talking about it, and interested to dive into this subject tonight. Greco.
Yeah, and I'm Dave Greco, and I am enamored with the game of baseball to the point where I went to the game with these two guys at a minor league park, and I got to watch a walk-off walk. And if I remember correctly, next to Mr. Matt Taylor, I think I squealed a little bit like a little girl and said, "I love this game." I am also a very passionate Oakland Athletics fan who grew up as an Oakland A's fan, um, and I live in Boston, and so that allows me to have a arm's length kind of feel for what we're going to be talking about today, which is the demise of Oakland baseball. Um, so recently, um, and not so recently, the A's have made an announcement that they will not be playing baseball in in Oakland anymore. And this announcement actually came 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago, April 2023, and that they are going to be moving to Vegas. They had their final game in Oakland this past week in 2024, and they're going to be going to Sacramento. They're not going to be called the Sacramento A's. They're going to be called the A's. Um, and then they're going to take their brand of baseball to Vegas. Um, as an A's fan, I'm going to tell you that my initial thoughts of this was thank goodness, because they had been trying in Oakland for years to get a stadium and get there. For years, I watched my team succeed with Moneyball, with all these different things, and never be able to keep their players. I watched some amazing trades go down where I think, oh, my season's over. They're giving up. They're done. And then next thing you know, we got, you know, three guys in the Mark Mulder deal that changed the course of our franchise going forward. And I thought if you told me that Mark Mulder's trade was going to be something that I was going to be happy about, I would have told you you're nuts, right?
That was with the Cardinals, right?
That was with the Cardinals, yeah. Josh Donaldson being one of them,
Oh, right, right,
Derek
right.
Norris being one of them. Um, I mean, you know, these things that you sit there and you look, player to be named later, um, you know, is something that my team made a I guess a part of their philosophy. Um, but that's not all. The reason why I had anticipation of my team being great, being able to keep some of these guys, is because we had the Eric Chavez, we had the Miguel Tejadas, we had the Tim Hudsons, the Barry Zitos, the Mark Mulders, we had the Yoenis Cespedes for a little bit while he was still good, and then we got the John Lesters, who didn't do anything. But then we had guys that ended up being MVPs after they left us. The Jason Giambis, who wasn't actually MVP with us, but also left. It became a thing where I was just waiting for the next shoe to drop and who was going to leave us and who we're going to get. But that wasn't always our franchise history. Gentlemen, in your research, or I don't know if you knew this, all time most winning franchise in baseball history of pennants. Who's
Of
number one?
pennants.
Pennants. Who's number one?
The Yankees.
Yeah, who's number two?
Uh, American and national.
Yeah, both.
I would say the A's are definitely up there. Number two, I would guess, is the Cardinals.
The Athletics
They are.
Wow.
with 14. Yeah.
Huh.
World Series wins.
Yeah.
Who's number one? Yankees.
Yeah.
Who's number two?
I would say the Cardinals because I think the
Yeah.
Cardinals would have 11.
Yeah. Who's number three?
I'm guessing either the A's or the Red Sox.
How about both? They're tied with 9.
Right.
So you're
Interesting.
talking
Wow.
about a franchise that has the history of being something significant, right? That has a history of winning, right?
Yep.
They in 4 of those championships came in Oakland,
Yep.
right? It's not like this just happened, right? When you think about the Oakland A's, wow, they're the West Coast team, right? Do you ever know why they're their I guess their mascot is a white elephant?
I
You
heard
guys
this
ever hear that story?
somewhere.
No.
Yeah.
I know it has to
Because
do with Charlie O.
well, they're the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. Right?
Oh,
They're the team that while they were in Philly, all anybody ever wanted to talk about was the Philadelphia Phillies. But guess who won the World Series? The Oakland, well, then the Philadelphia Athletics.
yeah.
It wasn't the Phillies. The Phillies didn't win until, like we talked about in the last one, Pete Rose showed up and got them their first one.
Yep.
The A's were winning in the early 1900s. They became the franchise in Philly that had to leave. They went to Kansas City,
Yeah.
went there for a few years, failed there because Charlie Finley was the guy who wanted to dismantle my team.
Yep.
Went to Oakland, right? My team is as successful as they were was in spite of their ownership. Their ownership for years had their way with trying to sabotage my team. Finley, before I was born, was cutting players' salaries, was trading Vita Blue to the Red Sox for nothing. Ended up having that trade be rejected by the league because they thought it was not a viable trade because he was ready to give up. He told guys that he would give them bonuses in their checks and actually pay them if they grew mustaches.
Right.
Hence Raleigh fingers and his handlebar mustache.
Yeah.
Right. Those were the days when my man would bring a donkey to the field. My team, for the most part, was a laughing stock, but they won. And that continued with the current ownership of Lou Wolf and Mr. John Fisher.
Yeah.
Now, and then I'm going to shut up and let you guys chime in. I said that I was pretty excited about the fact that they were leaving Oakland. I was done with the the constant battles with the city of Oakland to get a field and going through and seeing mock-ups of fields and the Howard Terminal and having something there. And now to finally get a home in Vegas, I was cool with it. But here's why I'm not now. I don't think that this is going to change my franchise any. I don't think it's going to allow us to keep players. I don't think that this is going to be something that is going to add revenue beyond revenue sharing to what translates onto the field. And the reasons why I don't think that's going to happen is because one, we're a team that doesn't have a name right now. We don't have those marketable players. In fact, our owner sat there and said, "Hey, you know what? We're excited that you guys get to see Oakland A's baseball or A's baseball in Sacramento. You get to watch players like Aaron Judge hit home runs." What happened
He said
to
that.
yeah? Why not bring up JJ Bleday? You're gonna talk about another team's hitting home runs in our field, so you can come down and watch the game. That's the owner of our
Yep.
team, right? They're gonna go there in Vegas and bank on tourism. And I'll tell you what, in the summer, in the desert, not a lot of folks are hanging out down in Vegas. In fact, that's their slow season. And then they're going to say, well, we expect some local favorites. Well, guess what? I'm hoping that there's a couple things that happen in Vegas that blow this up because there's still a chance. Yeah, they passed legislation to get the money, but there's still some opposition there. Not a lot of people are happy about this. And I don't think they're going to have the local turnout that they're promising in order to sustain a winning franchise in Vegas. All right, I'm going to shut up now.
It's a pastime. Like, I'll just start there. Baseball is known as the national pastime because it was one of the earliest sort of ways, like sports, to pass the time, to listen to go take in the game at the ballpark, and there's a plethora of other ways now to pass the time, which is why there's a little less um energy maybe behind baseball overall compared to maybe other sports these days. But especially in a place like Las Vegas where it's like ramped up to a million as far as so many other things to do, to think that a baseball team is gonna like get like a foothold there and actually like build up a fan base and some sense of loyalty, particularly when it's really uh, its moniker is what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Like, people go there to like have a good time and then leave. I can't even think of what an identity of a Las Vegas person would even look like as far as you know um, what kind of a team they would want to root for. Whereas the Oakland A's, for all of my criticisms that I believe fairly levy against them, uh, they have an identity, they have a personality, and you know, uh, uh, even before this, shitbag owner that they have now took over, they still had, as you kind of laid out, Greco, they always tried to look for these unconventional, more cost-effective sort of ways to build a winning team, and they managed to do it, and obviously have had a lot of success doing so. And I just keep seeing these parallels with how the A's are doing things, and then how the Red Sox are kind of following in regards to uh like what you just mentioned in your uh, starting soliloquy there, Greco, about um the banking on tourism to fund the to basically um uh to fund the endeavor to fund your team, basically. Like, you're counting on other stars and other teams to come in. That's how the Red Sox, that's how Fenway has felt the last few seasons, where you hear way more cheers for other teams that are coming in, like the Cubs or the Yankees or the Mets, or any teams that actually still have a loyal fan base that want to follow them. You're hearing them more and more now at Fenway, because Fenway's Fenway's the is the tourist stop. Oh, hey, let's go check out that ballpark. It's historic. and we'll share our team. And so now, just you mentioning that, it's dawning on me. The Red Sox are following the A's lead again. The A's are just trying to bank on what? We'll just traffic in the stars of other teams, really promote them to get people into our park. And that's just a like it betrays the city that you're supposed to be, fielding a team for. Like, if you wanted to just make money, go buy something else. Like, if you're buying a team, there should be one of the things that I read was a social contract with that city in that region that I am in good faith going to put my energy into making the best product we can. And that might have to look different depending on what market you're in, but we're going to try our darndest to do it. And it just doesn't feel like this owner in particular, John Fisher, has ever maybe acted in good faith to do that with your beloved A's, Greco. So my condolences to you.
Welcome to my world, because I'll tell you what, I've been hearing a lot of other teams being cheered more loudly than my team for years. For years.
It's a bummer.
Oh, where to begin? Well, so there's so many things that I'm like, what the fuck with all of this? Because first of all, they announced in April 2023 that they're leaving Oakland. Okay. Well, when are you going to Vegas? 2027. Really? You have no ballpark, no temporary facility. You have nothing there. Like they, as far as I remember, they have a minor league team there, facility. Why? Like, they have UNLV. They couldn't find a facility there. Like, if you don't have a facility to house a major league team for 3 seasons, at least, maybe 4, how do you get awarded a team or a relocated team? And I agree a lot with Quinn, what Quinn was saying. If you can't make a team work in your city, you should be forced to sell the team, and then the new owner should be forced to keep that team in that city for 5 years. That's the way I view things. It's happened so many times in so many different sports. I had a partial season ticket to the Whalers before they moved to Carolina.
I was wondering if you're going to bring that up, Matt.
Yeah, well, and if you look back today, I wrote an article on Brooklyn for a magazine one time, and there are people that are still angry about that.
Mm-hmm.
The Dodgers leaving Brooklyn, and the borough was never really the same after that. So, when I look at the A's specifically, in my lifetime, they won their first championship in Oakland the year I was born. And they're the only other franchise that won 3 straight championships were the Bulls in the NBA, the Islanders in the NHL, the Canadians in the NHL, and the Yankees in the late 90s or in 2000. Those are the only ones that won 3 straight championships in addition to the 2, 3, and 4, 72, 3, and 4 A's. So they built quite a team there. And, Oakland was able to support 4 major league franchises. So what happened? Like, they had an NHL team called the Seals. They had the Raiders, they had the Warriors, and now the A's. Mm-hmm. So that was a 4-sport town that now has no sports.
Yeah. So, couple things about, and actually, I'm going to try to go in order about my little answer. So, with regards to And it's something I want to respond to what Quinn said too, and it's going to hit me in a little bit. But in response to what you were talking about with the fields, right? What's your plan for the next 3 years? Well, one of those plans was to go to um the minor league affiliate in Vegas.
Mhm.
And the problem with that was that they were going to have to upgrade that brand new field to meet MLB standards and also share that field during the season with their minor league team,
Mm,
which was going to be tough to do,
yeah.
right? It was the other plan was that they were going to, because they have ownership or they had ownership in the Coliseum, was that they were going to ask the city to renew their lease with the Coliseum, and allow them to play there. Um, and so that almost came to fruition. The only thing was that the city said to MLB was, hey, if we allow them to stay here in this major league ballpark, we have a couple conditions. One, we want to keep the name of the A's. We want to keep the history. Two, when you do expansions, we want a team. So they can leave. John Fisher can take his ball and go away. We want to keep the A's, and we want that team to be reestablished once you do expansion, which has happened before, right? I mean, you think about just in the
Wow.
NFL, right? The most recent one, the Cleveland Browns,
Right. Right.
right? That's something that happened. Um, and oh man, now I'm going out of order here. So, one of the last things you mentioned, Taylor, remind me one of the things you were just talking about.
Well, in terms of, first of all, everybody talks about these guys being business people. And I look at professional teams very differently. I view a team as a toy. I don't view it as a business. Um, you know, and then they talk about how, um, you lose money during the year and things like that. So, okay, well, if you buy, a team for $10 million, the way George Steinbrenner did in 1973 for the Yankees,
Yeah,
and now the Yankees are worth $8 billion.
can you imagine that?
His family,
Wild.
Mm-hmm.
now they've gone from 10 million to 10 billion. So basically, how is that a loss, right? I remember Art Modell telling everybody he was losing money in the old stadium and all that other shit. And what he didn't tell people, of course, was, uh, that he collected all the money from all the luxury suites that they had in that old stadium. The Indians didn't get any of them. So that's why the Indians got a new ballpark. Now, I don't think publicly funded, I think public funded ballparks are bullshit.
Yeah, and that's what this is
I
going to
think
be.
the owners should pay for their own fucking stadiums.
That's what this is.
Mm,
Now, I'm sorry. The other thing you brought up was how Oakland lost those four teams,
Right.
right? So you're talking about, population wise, one of the larger population areas in the Bay Area,
Yep.
right? But you talk about two franchises on either side of the bay,
Yep.
specifically when we talk about San Francisco, and I'll talk about how much I hate them anyway,
Yep.
and what they did to my team, when they tried to move, and but also when you think about the Raiders and the 49ers and what that dynamic looks like, right? You have a team that's been winning for years and always had a contender, and then you have the Raiders, right? Who no loyalty there either. I mean, how many times did they go to Los Angeles and come back? Right?
Yep.
That team goes to Vegas. The Golden Knights, they're gone. Right? I think the hockey team got what swallowed up. Right? They didn't even. Did they relocate?
They dissolved, and I think
That's what
they,
I thought.
oh, man.
if I, if I'm doing like the pathways,
Yeah.
I think they're now known as the Dallas Stars.
Okay. Well, there you go. Right. But now Vegas has the Golden Knights,
Yeah.
right? And they have the Raiders. The Raiders team games, the majority of people who go there are tourists, but they're going in the fall, right?
Mm.
Yeah, they're away games at home, is what they call them, right? But then you have the Golden Knights, and the Golden Knights in Vegas are well attended by local residents. And part of the reason why is that is a new franchise, new branding, new
Yeah.
naming in Vegas. The
So they feel like
Vegas
it's
resident,
theirs.
it's
Mhm.
theirs, right? And that was one of the arguments when I was watching. So, by the way, I totally geeked out about this stuff when they were having the actual legislative sessions in Vegas about this. I watched them all,
Oh,
Oh,
and it was
that's
hours on.
hardcore.
Yeah, because I was optimistic this was going to actually happen until I heard more. And that's the problem.
Mm.
Right. Um, so other thoughts by you guys, because I can just keep going.
I think it just it amazes me that they could be in such limbo for such a long time um, before they go to that new city, and that new city doesn't even have anything ready for them. It blows my mind. I never, I mean, even if you look at the Woo Sox, right? I didn't love that move either. I for sentimental reasons. I knew the owner of the Paw Sox, and I interviewed him for an article I wrote, and I didn't like the fact that they screwed the city of Pawtucket in a lot of ways. So, um, but I like Polar Park, and I like the atmosphere there, and they've done a good job with it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I have mixed feelings about it. I think, with a team like the A's, um, they could have and should have made it work in Oakland. And I don't put it, maybe I'm not looking at it, from all angles, but um, I think it's the responsibility of the owner to make it work in the city that he's in. No, if I open my own practice in mental health, nobody pays for my office. The taxpayers don't pay for my office. Why do I have to pay for his place to put his fucking baseball team?
Mhm.
And then, I had this big argument with my father-in-law because he lives in Denver and they built all the stadiums down there with public money and they're all right next to each other. And he's like, well, yeah, they pay for themselves and the money gets paid back. And I'm like, yeah, the money gets paid back by taxpayers, not the owners who benefit from the stadium.
Yeah. So
So
yeah. So talk about dichotomy, right? My two favorite sports: baseball, number one by a landslide; football, number two. And you know what? The only reason why I'm a fan of the team that I am in football is
Mm.
because when I was a kid and I fell in love with the A's, I watched a game and I saw they had the same damn colors as my A's. And I was like, oh, they must be the same team. So I'm a Packers fan. And
yeah,
I've been a Packers fan. And I'll tell you what, who owns the Packers?
The
fans.
fans.
The fans, the city, the fans. They own the Packers. Now, there are people who get paid and they do all that stuff, but I'll tell you what, they're the ones who own it. Going back and knowing a little bit of what I know about how the contract negotiations or the stadium negotiations had gone with the city of Oakland, I will tell you that from what I understand, and while I've never been there, Oakland specifically, but also the state of California, has been a shit show. And getting something passed
Mm.
through the red tape and the bureaucracy and all the other baloney that went along with it was one of the biggest hangups. I remember many times that they had an opportunity or that they even had funding secured, private funding to build stadiums in Oakland and it falling apart. whether it was environmental testing that they had to do that wouldn't get done for years, and then
People wetting
finally
their
did.
beak.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, one of the things that was interesting is that shortly after the A's announced that they were going to be moving to Vegas, it came to light that there was actually going to be a meeting a few weeks after that in the city of Oakland with the new mayor, who said that we were really close to actually getting a stadium accepted in the city. To the franchise's credit, they had been trying to stay in Oakland for years. My gripe is less about that and more about what this is going to do to the franchise going forward and that history that I talked about. If
Mhm.
this was the Tampa Bay Rays, nobody would be
Yeah.
batting an eyelash about it,
Yeah.
right? This is, in granted, not many people know this, one of the most historical franchises in all of sports, not just Major League Baseball,
Yep.
in all of sports. One of the most winningest franchises, one of the most historic franchises, had some of the biggest names you've ever heard walk through those doors and put on a uniform, is now going to a place where nobody's going to care. There's not going to be home fanatics. There's not going to be people spending the money on it. They're not going to care. Right now, one of the things that I'm hoping, and I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm hoping, is that there's a teachers union that's being pesky, because one of the things that the teachers were trying to do was get funding passed for better, I think it was material and also better facilities and also maybe some extra pay. Um, and it was told during the legislature sessions, the same ones that this ballpark was discussed, um, that they didn't have time to review it. But then they did a special emergency session for the stadium itself. So there's actually, I think, petitions going around, and I don't know the status of it. This is something I probably should have looked up before I talked about this. That they were actually going to get something on the ballot to vote this down and get this out and make it not happen. And I'm hoping that that happens, because there's a couple places that I think I'd like to see them go better. One is potentially stay in Sacramento,
Mm.
but even more enticing to me is Salt Lake City.
Mm.
Really?
Yeah. Have you heard about Salt Lake City and what they're doing up
I know they just got an NHL team, the
there?
Coyotes.
Yeah. They,
Um, what are they doing specifically?
there is a group that is looking to buy a baseball team or bring a team in during expansion. They already have the field location. They already have a field plan. They already have
Mm.
contractors. They're ready to build it even before they even get a franchise there. They have the ability to do that. And it's part of the economic plan of the city in order to entice professional sports teams to that area.
Hmm.
And market size and the ability to sustain something there, I believe, is more sustainable there than it is in Oakland or than it is in
Well,
Vegas.
because there's less competition there. I feel like you'd draw in not just people from Utah, but I feel like maybe other like neighboring states potentially too.
Yeah,
Possibly,
think
yeah.
so too.
It also has a Salt Lake A's.
Yeah,
kind of
I'll
kind
take it.
of kind of flows a little better than the Vegas A's.
Yeah,
Uh, it is going to be a little bizarre to see the A's play in a field that's uh, um I think what I read was that it seats 14,000 people at
Yeah.
full capacity, which is like what, 20, at least 20,000 less than maybe the smallest major league ballparks.
Yep.
It's going to look so puny. And what's going to be really depressing is that, you know, Because then I'm like, well, the A's were drawing what, like on average, like 11,000, in attendance, which obviously looks terrible in a cavernous
Yeah.
ballpark like the Coliseum. So I'm like, well, it'll end up maybe looking fuller, but not in Sacramento. Like in Sacramento, like it's not like maybe if it had remained in Oakland, it would end up like looking fuller. So it'd almost be like an optical illusion where it would look like there's more energy or buzz. But it might just end up looking even more pathetic. Yeah. Because it's not going to have the like markers or the scale that typical ballpark is that you're used to seeing.
Yeah.
I want baseball in Oakland. Oakland to me is a sports city. It's a baseball city. Um, I don't like I don't like cities. Uh, I just don't like teams moving. Like I remember as a kid, in Maryland, the Colts moving out in the middle of the night. You know,
Mm.
um, all I didn't even like the Expos leaving Montreal. I think um, it does damage.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
It does damage.
I was looking up. I was like, when was the last baseball team that did this? And in my head, I'm like, I think it was the Expos. And I looked it up, and I'm pretty sure that was the last team that
Yeah.
switched cities. But I don't know. Call me ignorant because I know apparently the Expos were there for what, like 30 years, 30 something years, I think. Because I think they established in like 69 is what I looked up. So they were there for a while, but I just don't, aside from them trading us Pedro, and I think didn't Vlad Guerrero get a start there before he moved on to the
Yep. Yep.
to the
Randy
Angels?
Johnson.
Oh, Randy Johnson?
Yep.
Yeah, he did. He started. Yeah.
Yep.
Really? I always thought he was started with the Mariners, but he was at the
Gary
Expos
Carter.
first.
Yep.
Tim
Hmm.
Raines.
So
Moises
even with
Alou.
all, oh,
Sorry, I'll
Moises
stop.
Alou started there too.
I'll stop rambling off Expos.
Oh, uh, the Expos just, I don't know, they never seem to have nearly the identity that a team like the Toronto Blue Jays did, like who just keep it to Canada teams. And so it just didn't feel like it registered as like, what? Oh, not the Expos. So they moved down to Washington. In the same way that the A's, just it does feel strange to not think about a team being in Oakland, given the history and the success that they've had over the years.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, right? We're not talking about the Expos who never won anything, right? And I think that's why Toronto's more rooted there,
Because they
right?
won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also look at Montreal as one of those big cities who didn't really care about baseball. And I almost feel like that's going to be the same kind of deal with Vegas,
Yep.
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But then again, I also heard the same thing about why the Nationals, right, where they are in Washington D.C. and what that was like when the Senators were there before they became the Rangers, right?
Mm.
And how there was, not the fandom that was there, but I feel like it's kind of there right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
Albeit, it's newer and they
Yep.
won recently.
Yep.
But now they're being tried, right? It's the downside, right? So I'm curious, and part of me hopes I'm wrong, but I really want new ownership.
Well, that feels like that's the key to get that. Like, he's not even, from what little I read about him, his parents owned or started the Gap, and
Yep.
so his wealth is handed down from all the money that was made
Of
on
course it is.
that ownership. And I'm
Yeah.
like, these you know these billionaires that just have stuff handed down to them, like, no wonder he just treats it as just kind of like a what, like, I wonder if he is like, maybe it's an inferiority complex, or maybe he's heard enough of being told he was just handed stuff, and now he's trying to like be like, well, I'm gonna make this change. I'm gonna make even more money by making this move because Oakland, we're not getting the money that we need, or we're not getting the city to build the stadium. So maybe it's his way to like stake his claim of the money that he can make or something because he felt like stuff was handed to him. But it's like, why are the richest people often the stingiest whenever you read about it?
Why they're
It's
rich.
yeah, yeah. It's really disheartening, and I really think that you know, because I was surprised to learn it was the A's to some degree. I'm like, well, yeah, they've always been a team on a budget, and they just go through their ebbs and flows of not being good for stretches and then being good for stretches. And I hadn't even dug into like, well, when did this current owner, who seems particularly terrible, buy the team? And I'm like, oh, it was after the whole early 2000s run that they had, when that's the last time I remember them being like steadily good.
Mm-hmm.
In an impressive sort of way. I know they had a little blip there in like the early 2010s, I think.
Yeah, 2012, and I mean they've been playoff contenders and in the playoffs. More than they haven't in the.
More than the Red Sox, I think. I think they actually have been in the playoffs more than the Red Sox have in the last
Probably.
like 20 years, something like that.
Oh
Because
yeah,
the Red Sox too often bottom out, and we're like, we either winning the World Series or we're like last in our division. It's
Yeah.
really aggravating.
yeah, yeah. But here's the deal, right? You talk about the ownership. I don't know this guy, right? I don't know what he was supposed to bring to the table. I do know that his partner when he bought it was Lou Wolf, who actually was the owner of Levi Strauss.
Yeah.
Um, which so talk about two garment companies coming together to buy a team. But you look at other teams. I mean, George Steinbrenner, what was it? Wasn't he like a boat owner, like
Big
down
Mag.
in
Yeah.
Tampa, right?
Mag. Yep.
I mean, you know, the same time, I feel, and this is just my opinion because I don't know this, that he's going to try to establish something there and sell it because he's going to have more value selling it down in Vegas with a new
Mm.
stadium than he is ever gonna or would have ever in Oakland.
As
I don't.
possible.
Of
Yeah,
course he is.
yeah,
Yeah.
And not only that, getting the new stadium that's publicly funded raises the value of the team, and he gets the benefit of all that.
100%,
Mm-hmm.
100%. Now that being said, I aside from and I don't know the answer to this. Aside from maybe I'd say less than 50%. I don't think there's a lot of owners that are really vested necessarily or entrenched necessarily even in the region that they own the team from, right? I mean, your beloved Red Sox. How many of those guys are Boston boys,
None.
None of them, I don't think.
right?
None.
Are they're invested in the city now, right? They're invested in the
Yeah,
region now,
they
Really?
used to be.
but it's all about making the money, right? And that's okay. But I'll tell you what, that's my argument too. When guys say that, or people say that, players are overpaid. Well, would you rather that all the jersey sale money goes to the owners? Would you rather that the owners get to keep all that stuff when they're making the money on the backs of the players who are playing for them?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
No.
I always take
Never.
the side.
Yep.
Always.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
Never
I
Now,
never met
begrudge
an
a
owner
player
that I
trying to get
liked.
that money. Yep. Sorry,
I'll
Matt, go
tell you
ahead.
what, there is a place for good ownership, and there's a need for good ownership. Owners who invest in their town, their city, invest in their town, and are part of that are important. And we can't, you know, understate it just because we're pissy at our two owners, for our respective clubs, right? The ownership groups for our respective clubs. We can't shit on them, right? All ownership, because that's not necessarily the case. I look at the cities of in Kansas City right now. The owners for the Chiefs and the owners for the Royals are invested in that area, right? They are, and they have been. Just as examples.
Well, and I think that's why with the pending sale of the Celtics, I think a lot of people are hoping Pagliuca ends up getting a team together to buy it because he's a local guy. He's someone that is a familiar commodity that I think we can be optimistic will kind of keep this Celtics train on the rails because it's been going so well. But you know, there's worries obviously that if it goes to the highest bidder, he might not be able to
Well,
get to
let me
heights
ask
that
you
other
this.
people do. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. If you won, say, whatever, Powerball, whatever that is, right? And you walked away with, $1 billion, and you could invest some of that money and become ownership of a professional sports franchise, would you turn that down, even if it's not the Red Sox or a local sports team?
Would I turn it down?
Yeah.
No.
Right. Does that mean that you are going to suck as an owner? You hope not.
I would do business differently than just about every other owner out there. For me, if to me it all comes down to success on the field, on the ice, or on the court, because then you know that's where you make. That's what the owners don't understand, that winning. Maybe I had to spend this much in payroll in order to put that championship team together. But the thing about the Celtics is they're going to get all kinds of money this year because they're going to be able to raise ticket prices and raise jersey sales and all that other stuff that's going to bring them money this year. And the Celtics have an odd arrangement because the Jacobs, who
On
are
the
the
building.
reasons that I'm not a Bruins fan, um, the Jacobs own the arena and the concessions. They own the largest concessions company in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know how the Celtics make money off of like they definitely don't make the money off the Garden or the concessions. So I'm guessing they just make money off their brand, and TV sales and
Yeah.
things like that. So but they're going to make money this year because people are going to pay more money to see them, fresh off their championship year. So me putting, the biggest reason that the Knights have succeeded in Vegas is because they've been in existence for 6 years and they've played in the finals twice and already have a Stanley Cup. That's the biggest reason they're successful. So they put a good product out there. So that would be my focus as an owner.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And that's something that, watching um, the legislative sessions, they talked a lot about, and they use that as leverage to um, get the A's there. It was also something that was used against them, and the fact that the Knights were their own was why they were so successful. Now, I'll tell you what, baseball's super unpredictable, as we all know. We've both seen our teams overachieve when we thought they wouldn't have won, and we've seen our teams underachieve when we thought that they should have.
Yep.
Who's to say who's right or wrong? Now, curiosity, Mr. Rolo. You said that you had some things that you brought up or that you researched.
Oh.
I'm curious. I want to hear some of these things that. Or did
I've
we
already
talk about them?
I've already sprinkled them in there. That this John Fisher guy was just handed down all this fortune from his parents to buy this team, and how he is just someone that's completely uninvested from actually owning a sports franchise that means a lot to a community, and instead just wants to, make every last dollar that he can for his portfolio. And um, you know, uh, I think his ownership is what really stood out to me, because I was ready to just kind of, more so just sort of disparage the A's for negatively influencing my baseball team with their Moneyball ways. But uh, but in looking how that, at least I can say, is shrewd, like and ultimately well intentioned. There was still an intention from Billy Bean and whoever the owner was then. I'm sure you know who the owner was back then, but in that they still were trying to put a winning product on. They were just doing it in a less conventional way, more cost-effective way that, you know, I personally find kind of dull sometimes. And I think also is built to get you to the postseason, but not always win postseason games. And
You have any evidence of that?
well,
I'm just kidding.
that
I'm just kidding.
the
It's all evidenced. Yeah, it's all evidence. Yeah, the only ones who did it right is actually your team,
that's right.
right? So now, let me just say this, okay? Um, as much as I blame a lot of this on, you know, um, Mr. Fisher and the ownership group, this has been something that we've had to deal with since the days of Mark McGuire leaving, since the
Mm.
days of um, you know, Dave Magadan and you know, the replacement players, like one of my favorites of all time, Frankie Menachino, right? These issues that are coming to fruition now started when another team threatened to leave the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And I alluded to this before, but the San Francisco Giants threatened to leave the Bay Area, and they were going to go to Tampa Bay before the Rays became a thing. They were going to go to Tampa Bay, and the major leagues, Bud Selig, said, nope, we want you to stay in San Francisco. So since the A's are very successful, they are one of the highest drawing teams in the league. This is right coming off the backs of the World Series championship and the World Series visit with against the Reds that I don't want to talk about it. And previously, the reason why I hate the Dodgers and Bob Gibson, so when we talk about that era of Oakland A's baseball, I mean, that was the heyday. I mean, you're talking about, Ricky Henderson, Dave Henderson, Harold Baines, right? That was your outfield. Then you had Carney Lansford, Walt Weiss, you know, Mike Gallego, who made me want to be in middle infield because his last name ended with an O, and he was short
Yeah.
and dark like me. And then you had Mark McGuire, right? You had Bobby Witt Sr. You had, you know, Dennis Eckersley in the bullpen.
The Eck.
You had, Terry Steinbach behind the plate. You had Tony La Russa managing this team, and you had Billy Bean
Mm-hmm.
as a bench player
Mm-hmm.
on that team. Now, you go through those 3 years, and I almost think that they were better than most teams had in that stretch for, even going into this generation. Those teams were dominant,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it all fell apart because the Giants were awarded regional rights
Right.
in the area. Oakland couldn't advertise outside of pretty much Oakland because MLB said, you know what, we're gonna show Giants games regionally. We're gonna black out the A's games. We're going to broadcast. We're gonna give more bandwidth to the Giants. Giants going to be able to advertise on TV. The Giants going to be able to have certain rights regionally that the A's were not awarded. And one of the first things when the A's started to become, known as the small market team they are now, was they went to Major League Baseball. They went to Bud Selig and said, "Hey, can we have some of these territorial rights back?" And they said, "Sure. Just talk to the Giants about it." The Giants said, "No, we wouldn't do that. We want you out." They don't need Oakland there. They just get themselves a brand new ballpark. They're paying these players a shit ton of money. They're paying some of my old guys, right? Barry Zito going across the bay.
Yeah. Well, he sucked for pretty much his entire time there, if that made you feel any better.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you get rid of that foul territory and somebody who pitches the contact, you're going to suck.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, but I'll tell you what, that's one of the things that has affected my team going forward because you know what? Even if they were to build a new stadium, they're not getting the tourism because you know what? People in San Jose aren't going to go and see their favorite player in Oakland because they don't even know who the hell's playing in Oakland because they're not getting to watch the games on TV. They're not getting to listen to them on the radio.
That's still the way it is to this day?
That's still the way it is to this day.
Unless you have like MLB extra innings or like one of those like baseball
But even those get blocked out. Even those get blacked out.
Really? That feels illegal. I don't understand how that's allowed in this day and age.
Well, the NFL just actually went through this with Sunday Ticket. And their team's getting blacked out in this big lawsuit and all that stuff. But I digress. That's the way it works.
Well, you talk about accessibility, right? For fans, the Red Sox have become less accessible like the A's have. If you look at, when I called in last night, I was bitching about the product as a whole, not just on the field, but off the field. The app is a piece of shit. It's $30 a month. Getting to Fenway is the biggest pain in the ass. And they charge not only a major league price, but the highest major league price for a minor league product. And Tony Maz said after that, he's like, they're minor league now. It's like they're minor league. And then he started talking about like the facilities, like the dining room afterwards and all this other stuff that they've downgraded because they're saving on bullshit. And if they just made it accessible to fans, I pay $16 a month, I think, for Max. If they made it like $10 a month to get the NESN app, I'd get it, and it worked.
That's the thing. Every other like going rate for these apps, for these streaming services, is like at the high end $20.
Yeah.
At the high end $20 a month. For them to try to charge it's $30 a month.
Yeah.
Is extortion and ridiculous, particularly given how crappy it is too.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
And
that's the NESN app?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's awful.
Yeah. It's terrible.
And the broadcast stinks too. David Bryan is good, but I don't think any of those guys are horrible, but you're not going to get, the analysis of the game, and the real dive into whether a move is a good move or a bad move, because they're not going to piss off John Henry because John Henry owns NESN. So you're not going to see any of that. Eck and Jerry Remy were entrenched already. So
it's tough to get rid of them.
They were loved. So these other guys are new, and they're not going to call a game that way.
Yeah, I'll tell you that's one of the things that obviously my dollar doesn't go there that far. With my team or any of us, really. Collectively you hope it does something. But one of the things that I loved about my team, and I don't think either of you got to really enjoy it, was that we had a broadcast team
Mm.
of Glenn Kuiper and Ray Fosse,
Mm-hmm.
and they were phenomenal. They were, um, I mean, I remember laughing to the point where I was in tears. And, I mean, they're not Vin Scully. They're not going to pontificate on, as intelligently, as effortlessly as he did. But they had some great calls. They were honest, and they really did a good job of, not only, being critical when they needed to, but also talking up and being optimistic about the product that's on the field when it was appropriate. They actually lost Juan Ray because he passed away, um, and almost around the same time as Remy, if I remember correctly.
Mm.
And they also lost Glenn because um, Glenn had a slip up when he said that he was going to the Negro museums, and
Oh,
he said the other way, accident, and to the point where he didn't even realize he did. Um, and he ended up getting fired over it.
Mm.
And that kind of corresponded, when all this kind of happened. That was last year
Mm.
at 2023 when they announced that they were going to be moving. It was shortly after the season started. I believe that actually happened, and it diluted the product on the field because the only broadcast that I get to see was them, and
Mm.
the only ones I ever wanted to see was them. But um, the announcers aren't bad. Dallas Braden's there, who was another romantic story, you know.
Mm.
Um, but I mean, the the amount of things that happened in Oakland that wouldn't necessarily happen anywhere else
Mm.
was pretty damn amazing.
yeah.
One of those being Dallas Braden.
Mm.
You know, all of us working in the mental health field. You talk about a gentleman who affected by substance use with his mother,
Mm.
who passed away and was raised by his grandmother and grew up in an area that was really tough and had a bad history. Well, what's this dude do? Go out and throw a perfect game
Mm.
on Mother's Day
I remember that. Yeah.
with
Yeah.
his grandmother in the stands. And the first thing he does is run off the field and grab her.
Mm.
How awesome is that? Right? You have
Yeah.
those things. I mean, even MC Hammer, like let's get away from the sentimental. MC Hammer got his damn name as a bat boy.
Yeah.
You know why? Quinn, do you know the story?
No, I don't.
Well, Taylor, you know it,
Yeah.
right? The guys said that he looked like Little Hammer. He looked like Hank Aaron. And so
Oh,
they called him Little Hammer,
Yeah.
that's funny.
right? And so he ended up adopting that name when he became a musician and called himself
Look at
MC
that.
Hammer, right? Those are things that have entrenched, this franchise,
Mm.
in that city. As much as I have no connection to Oakland whatsoever, and I have no loyalty there, there is a history there that I appreciate,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's gone. You know, did you ever watch a game where your beloved Red Sox were in Oakland?
Oh yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
ever hear the noise that happens in right field
The bongo drums and the cowbells and yeah.
and the
Oh yeah, yeah.
horns,
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well,
right?
yeah,
The right field bleachers,
yeah,
right? Notorious
yeah.
for bringing instruments.
Oh yeah, I can hear it now. Now that you're mentioning that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I
Mm.
mean, one of the guys we got from you, I believe it was for actually, it was either Falk or Isringhausen, Josh Reddick,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? Wearing his thong to the plate, coming up to his team, roasting him and having him come up to Careless Whisper, and then him going 3 for 4 that night and breaking a slump, and then not getting rid of that song for forever. In fact, when he came back to the stadium, that's what they played.
Would he like walk out to like the blazing sax that's in that song?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There
funny.
was a relationship, even though I didn't get to personally experience it. I felt it watching those games. There was a personal relationship between the players and those fans. Right? I've talked about Stephen Vogt, and I say we believe in Stephen Vogt. And the reason why is because that boy came to Oakland in one of the most lackluster transactions you ever saw and became a pillar in that franchise for the years that he was there, to the point where he would get up and the fans would chant, "We believe in Stephen Vogt," and signs all over the place. Those fans became as much of the game and part of the game as I've ever seen. And I don't know this, and maybe one of you folks can look it up, or I can look it up. But I believe that some guy named Crazy George was the first fan to ever start the wave.
I know it started in Oakland. I didn't.
And it started on Oakland.
Oh, started it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Wow. Now that depending on who you are, it's either a good or a bad thing. But that type of history, I think, is going to be lost.
Yeah,
it will be.
And I'm already battling. I mean, think about it. I had to start. All right, so who's the team with the most pennants? And you're like, and you knew I was probably leading to Oakland. I was going to tell you, oh yeah, no, we're actually 25th, right? You knew we were going to be up there, right?
Yeah.
Tied for third in World Series rings, right? Now imagine if we could have actually paid to keep the guys that we had. How many more rings or more pennants we would have had, right?
Yeah.
It could be staggering.
What would it be like, though, if you actually got an owner that spent a ton of money?
I wish I knew. Because, I mean, to be honest, I don't think I'll ever know, right? And that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that we're going to go to Vegas and we're going to be done. And part of me loves the game of baseball, but at some point, and I think that this is something that I've gotten used to, not being a hometown fan. I don't have that romantic side of my thing where, the local team's my team just by zip code, because that's arbitrary to me, right? I mean, to be honest, I'd be more invested in the local team if some of the guys who played on the team were actually local. I mean, when was the last time you had somebody from Mass or even New England playing for the Red Sox? What, Mirabelli?
Oh.
Maloney, yeah.
Maloney, yeah, he was one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it's been a while, right? Now, and we even talked about it. The ownership isn't necessarily invested in the area. So for me, it's always been kind of arbitrary, right? So my loyalty to my team was to the players. And what ended up happening was, as the team progressed, I got introduced to new players that I fell in love with, and then they carried on. Now that I'm moving to Vegas, I don't know if I'm necessarily going to be as invested in the team as much as I was.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, it's allowed me to be more of a baseball fan globally, just by virtue of the fact that my team plays at 10 o'clock at night for the first pitch, and the fact that nobody in the local media is going to cover what happens with the A's, right?
Right.
So I watch, like we talked about, I watch a lot on national broadcast, which allows me to get a larger perspective than say somebody who normally would listen just to local broadcasts. But I'll tell you what, I don't know if I'm going to have the loyalty that I did with my team once they move. And again, it's not because they're moving out of Oakland. It's because that promise that I was waiting for of them actually being able to sustain that team, like you said, what it would my team look like if we actually get to pay or like pay them. I don't think I'm ever gonna know.
Yep.
And that was always like a pipe dream, right? That eventually I'm gonna get there. And I don't think that's gonna happen now. I'm not optimistic.
Well,
So it challenges my fandom.
That makes three of us, because I think Matt and I are aligned in feeling really skeptical about where the Sox are going to.
Yeah. Yep.
Even if we're not moving, it's still not headed in a direction that looks very promising.
Nope.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. For you guys, I think the fact that and I know it looks bleak now because Breslow's in there and what does he know? But I'll tell you what, I think that for you folks, yeah, you made some mistakes. Bogarts is gone. The Mookie Betts trade. I mean, I think that guy is better than Shohei any day of the week. And I know we talked about that already. But Mookie Betts is the guy that you probably should have hung on to, right? I mean, Chris Sale turning it around. But some guys just can't play in Boston or New York, right?
Yeah.
I think that you have promise in your team going forward. Your problem is your division.
Part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're already behind the 8 ball.
Yep.
Right.
Behind a team that spends.
Yeah. And you can be that one.
Yes.
But are you going to have the franchise, the free agents available now? Right? Are you going to be able to strike lightning in the bottle with a David Ortiz? Right? Or are you going to be able to pay Manny Ramirez to come in, or Johnny Damon to come in, or Kurt Schilling to come in, or a Pedro for that matter? Are you going to be able to trade for him and keep him? A lot of teams aren't as frivolous as they used to be. You got a lot of younger stars getting locked up longer that normally you'd be able to take advantage of by spending. So part of me doesn't feel too bad for you about the spending thing, just so you know, right?
Yeah.
Your budget now exceeds my team's whole franchise cost, and you're pissed about how much they're spending.
True.
So, yeah.
I was going to say I'm pissed about the lack of spending and the quality that results from that. That's what I'm pissed about. If you're going to rebuild your team, that's fine. But don't charge me $150 for a bleacher seat.
Yeah.
Don't give me a shitty app. Make Fenway a more accessible place. Provide more parking, better public transit in place.
Parking, yeah.
Make it a better experience for my son and the kids. All those different types of things. That's a whole other topic I could go on.
Yeah.
But
I think it's on our list.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna head out though, kids.
Yeah, no. We gotta call this one. I gotta go play golf tomorrow morning at 9.
Oh,
I know that's rough. Yeah, I know that's rough. Right.
Man.
Yeah. So
enjoy.
Yeah, I will. It's the first time in about 7 years that I played, so it's gonna be a shit show.
Godspeed.
Yeah, thanks. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you taking the time to talk about my awful franchise, and I appreciate your empathy.
Your beloved A's.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully, you're wrong in the projection of your beloved Red Sox.
Yeah. I hope I'm wrong too.
Yep. Would love to be wrong.
Oh, I think your market would prevent it, and I'm optimistic for you.
I'm glad somebody is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I'll tell you what, the white elephant might be dead.
Oof.
So harvest the tusks, boys. Worth a lot of money. You've already been harvesting all the players. Harvest the tusks. Make some pianos out of it.
We'll do our best.
Yeah. But until next week, folks,
Sounds
gentlemen, have a good night.
good. Seeing you kids.
See ya.
Good night.